The American administration headed by Donald Trump was fully biased to the Israeli colonial project in Palestine, and that's why the Palestinian leadership decided to stop all contact with that administration. But now, and after the win of the election by the Democrat Joe Biden, a new Palestinian-American chapter of relationship at the level of politics and diplomacy could be in the offing. For more on the topic, I have with me Mr. Amir Zahir, a professor of law, comedian, and political activist, and he played a key role in Bernie Sanders' campaign. Welcome to our program, Mr. Amir.
Ahlan, good to see you all.
You're welcome. Mr. Amir, the people of the United States decided to vote out Donald Trump from the White House, voting for the Democrat Joe Biden. To what extent do you think that Biden's administration is going to reverse the steps and policies taken by Trump towards the Palestinian cause in terms of moving the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem and the approval of the annexation plan, in addition to stopping all forms of aid to the Palestinians and to the UNRWA?
Well, I have to say, Osama, I'm not very optimistic. I mean, I've been working for the last many months with other Palestinian activists to try to get answers from the Biden campaign as to what their policies would be. Look, we Palestinians know Joe Biden has a very long history of being very pro-Israel. He's maybe the only presidential candidate who has ever said, I'm a Zionist, and he's attended all the AIPAC conferences and always told AIPAC what they wanted to hear. With policy, with actual policy, what we've heard from the Biden administration is most things that are not very promising at all. Yes, he said he would restore funding to Palestinian refugees and reinstate relationships with the PLO and the PA. But there's a lot of things that he said he's not going to do, and a lot of things that are not clear. He said very clearly that he will not return the embassy to Tel Aviv from Jerusalem. He said it's in Jerusalem and it's staying there, which means Joe Biden administration is going to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, which means now many other countries might do it because it's not Donald Trump doing it, it's Joe Biden doing it, and that's very dangerous. He also said that he's against annexation, but he hasn't been clear with us, and we've asked him many times, about whether or not he would recognize annexation if the Israelis actually annex under his administration. He hasn't been clear about that. And so what we found as activists in the Democratic Party and in America is that pro-Israel and really AIPAC-type groups are deep within the Biden foreign policy team. His top foreign policy advisor told us that the first step for Israelis and Palestinians coming back to the negotiating table is for Palestinians to recognize Israel as a Jewish state. And of course, we're not willing to do that. So I'm not optimistic at all. I think we're going to get basically, I don't think it's a new chapter, like you said. I think it's an old chapter, even minus the things that we had before. So we're going to get the years of Obama minus Jerusalem and minus any other things. So I hate to sound depressing, Osama, but I'm not very optimistic at all.
Okay, Mr. Amir, but unlike the Republican Party, the Democratic Party has always a debate, and we heard of the progressive voices within the party. Don't you think that people like you within the Democratic Party can press Biden towards changing the policy of the United States when it comes to the Palestine question, and to press Israel to commit to the United Nations resolutions and the international legitimacy vis-a-vis the Palestinian cause?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll tell you, our experience with the Democratic Party this year was that many Palestinian American delegates in the Democratic Party convention tried to add language to the Democratic Party platform that just recognized the occupation. We couldn't even get the word occupation in the platform. That was defeated by the Democratic Party, and not defeated by a little bit, defeated overwhelmingly by the Democratic Party. So, you know, is there more doors for us open in the Democratic Party than in the Republican Party? Sure. And have we made some strides? Sure. But most of that progress was made under Trump. In other words, when the whole Democratic Party wanted to be against anything Trump did, including the stuff he did with Israel, it was easy to find partnership. But what's going to happen when you have a Democratic Party who basically has the same policies as Donald Trump? Is our voices of opposition going to be received as sort of openly and welcomingly? I don't think so. And so I'm afraid. You look, I voted for Joe Biden. I told people to vote for Joe Biden because Donald Trump is that bad. But I'm afraid actually we're going to have a lot of sacrifices in the progressive movement and in the pro-Palestinian movement going forward with Joe Biden, because he is going to sort of resurrect the bipartisan support for Israel. Look, the truth is, on substance, the styles of Donald Trump and Joe Biden differ immensely. But on substance, on the actual policy when it comes to Palestine, they're not that different. But Biden's support for Palestine could kill a lot of the progressive activism and criticism because he's a Democrat. That's what I think is much more likely to happen. That doesn't mean we're not going to keep fighting, of course, within the progressive movement. We are. But, like I said a few weeks ago when I told people to vote for Joe Biden, I said, look, we have a situation, I'm not a very religious person, but we know that, in Islam, you can't eat pork unless you have a case of extreme hunger and no other choices, and you can't have too much and you can't enjoy it, then you can eat the ham to survive. And Biden was the ham sandwich that we needed to eat to survive. But once the extreme hunger is gone, the prohibition comes back. So he's still a ham sandwich, and we still have to know that about him. There's a lot of roadblocks in front of us with this administration. And so I'm very aware of that. So I'm not optimistic about the things that you're describing, but we as Palestinian Americans will keep fighting for these policies, but we might have even more challenges under a Biden administration than we had under the Trump administration.
Yes, Mr. Amir, but we all noticed that the role of the Palestinian, Arab, and Muslim community in the 2020 elections in the United States was much better than the years before. And you mentioned that we have Palestinian members in the Congress now, we have Palestinian and Arab delegates in the many Congress or state councils. So there is a progress at this level. And we know what affects in the end the presidential hopefuls is the votes that they are going to get from this community or that. Don't you think that this awakening among the Palestinian, Arab, Muslim community in the United States would let them change their policies towards the Palestinian cause and the Middle East issues in general?
Well, I mean, maybe. And yes, we have been much more active and much more sort of politically aware and participating in elections, voting more, and all that is very positive.
Yeah.
That has led to much more openness in American society and in the Democratic Party on lots of other issues like Islamophobia. But Palestine remains this sort of red line in American politics where both parties are still strongly controlled by the Israel lobby, and it's very hard to move them. And so this is sort of the last challenge, the last hurdle is Palestine policy in both of these parties. And look, if it was anyone other than, it didn't have to be Bernie Sanders. If it was anyone other than Joe Biden, I might have been a little bit more optimistic.
Yeah.
But in our system, the president conducts foreign policy all by himself, basically. And Joe Biden, we saw Benjamin Netanyahu the other day send a tweet to Joe Biden thanking him for his 40 years of support for Israel. So we now have a guy who has a long history of supporting Israel very strongly and very blindly and knowing how to protect them from criticism because he does it with a smile. You know, Malcolm X one time said, you have to be careful about the fox and the wolf. If you are a lamb, you know, the wolf shows you his teeth by snarling at you and shows you that he wants to eat you. The fox shows you his teeth by smiling at you and then making it into your house, but he still eats you. They both still eat you at the end of the day. So you have to be careful. Are the Democratic Party the fox and the Republican Party the wolf, you still have to know how to deal with the fox because he still wants to eat you. So we have to be very careful how we're dealing with all of this. And that means never stopping. We can't just say, and this is the most important part, we can't just say, well, Joe Biden is here, so we can slow down with our activism because, hey, maybe he'll give us some stuff. No, quite the opposite. We have to actually go stronger and much more forcefully ahead because there could be an opportunity here to use activists to turn him in the beginning, but once he sort of gets entrenched with his pro-Israel stuff, it might be too late.
Yes, Mr. Amir, of course, change never comes so easily and so fast, but it is always incremental, okay? And the activism showed by the Palestinian Arab Muslim community in the United States, I think, is boding well. So if the community there builds on what happened during this election, don't you think that it can achieve more in terms of the American foreign policy towards the Arab and Muslim world for the elections to come? Because this is not the last election in the United States. And as I said before, sure, that each party wants to have more votes from the communities there.
Look, we've definitely made progress. There's no question about that. And we can have more effects on these things. So that's definitely true. At the same time, we like to think that all the, Muslim communities and organizations in America might be with us on Palestine, but actually quite the opposite happens. So just like we see, United Arab Emirates and Bahrain doing normalization agreements with the Israelis, there are Muslim groups in America who normalize with very pro-Zionist groups in order for them to sort of move up. I mean, if you are willing to normalize with Zionist groups in America, you can move up the Democratic Party. And we've seen that this year. There's a particular political action group called Mgage, which is a Muslim group, which has been uncovered by the electronic intifada to have deep ties with Zionist groups, and now their people are near the top of the Biden administration. And so that's very dangerous too. Look, Palestine is still the one issue that is a red line, and some Muslim organizations are willing to step on the Palestine issue to move up in the party. That's happened as well. So we have a lot of challenges ahead of us to make sure. But yes, definitely, our participation and our greater participation in the political process means that we will get there, right? We will get there. And I'm positive about the future in the long term, but I'm also very aware about the challenges we have in front of us in the short term.
Yes, and my final question to you, Mr. Amir, as you are a professor of law, is about the situation of human rights in Palestine. You watch and see how the Israeli occupation forces are violating Palestinians' human rights on a daily basis. Just today, we have a Palestinian prisoner, Kamal Abouar, who died in Israeli prisons because of medical negligence, and this story goes on day and day. Now, as a Palestinian community in the United States, to what extent you can use this issue, the Israeli violation of human rights in Palestine, in order to raise awareness of the public, of the American society about the situation here, and mobilize and bring more supporters for the Palestinian cause and the Palestinians' rights?
Yeah, I mean, first of all us Palestinians in America, our hearts are with Kamal. Our hearts were with Maher al-Akhras when he was going through what he's going through, and we're aware of all these things. And we should do everything we can, and maybe more than we're doing now, to make our elected officials aware of, look, this is where your American taxpayer money is going. It's going to take away human rights from Palestinians, to make sure that we are treated as third, fourth, fifth class people in under Israeli apartheid control. And not only that, the money we give to Israel takes away from Americans. Everyone knows about the water problems that were happening in Flint, Michigan over the last 5 years. They still don't have clean water there. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are bragging about the $38 billion that we're going to give to Israel. So we have to really frame this in terms of priorities and use our positions here in America to influence our congresspeople more. We've been doing more of that, and there are many Palestinian American activists and organizations, and especially young people, that are doing a lot of that. But of course, we have to keep pushing. And that's what I mean. I mean that what I've been saying all along this interview is that we have the same challenges ahead of us under the Biden administration, maybe even more than we had under the Trump administration, and we have to keep pushing forward. But I want all Palestinians who live back home to know that we don't feel disconnected from our homeland. In other words, we still see ourselves as Palestinian Americans as part of the communities back home. We're all one people. We all love each other, and we have to stand with each other all the time. And so we're trying to do a good job of that here. We need to do more, but understand that we are working hard towards that, and we love all of our people no matter where they are in the world.
Ahmed Zahir, Professor of Law, Palestinian political activist in the United States. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.
Thanks, Osama. Thanks.
You're welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, please keep following up our Facebook page, PIB. And for now, from me, Osama Nazar, thank you very much for watching and wish you a nice time.